Okay, right. I am going to get going now. So, as I said, hello. Thank you everyone for saying hello in the chat. Thank you for joining us today. It is so great to have you all here, and we are so excited to deliver this webinar for you. Um, my name is Annie. I am a social media specialist here at Flourish, and I absolutely love to tell stories and to communicate effectively. But I will be here today to answer any of your questions and just be a helping hand. Without further ado, I am going to pass over to Scott, who will be your host today.
Thanks, Annie. Welcome, everyone. That was great to see everyone where everyone's from in the chat there. I did see someone from the University of Northampton in the UK, so that's probably the closest one to me, about half an hour from where I live. So yeah, but we've got people from everywhere. Okay, so let's get started. So what are we going to go through today? We're looking at elevating presentations with data visualization. So today's agenda, what are we going to go through? We're going to cover why data storytelling matters and how it can enhance audience engagement and understanding. We're also going to go through an example case study where we break apart a story that we want to put in a presentation, and we'll look at maybe what not to do, and we'll also talk about how to pick the right visuals. We'll also then go on and talk a little bit about animation and how we can use that to bring visualizations to life and to highlight key insights. And then as we go along, we're going to do a few little sort of hands-on demos of Flourish and Flourish in Canva to show you how you can create some of the visuals that we show in this. And then at the end, Annie's also going to talk you through some of the latest enhancements and new features that we've released in Flourish over the last couple of months. Okay, so let's get going. Well, first we'll talk about why visual data storytelling. So why is this important? So I think we all kind of know that feeling of being bombarded with information. So I think now it's even more important than ever that we kind of stand out by telling a compelling story. Visual storytelling is a great way of doing that. And if we kind of define it, it's kind of the art of using visuals to convey information and evoke emotions. And when you combine powerful visuals with a strong narrative, you get a much more engaging and memorable experience. So just a quick question for everyone on the webinar today, just to get a sort of scale, a sense of a scale of how much information's out there. Can we guess how many presentations are created every day around the world? So if you pop your answers in the chat, we'll see kind of how close everyone gets to that number. Just as if you're sort of thinking about it and you're looking for a reference point, the US population is about 340 million people. So if you think of that, let me give you a bit of a guide. Okay, so we've got a real range of guesses here. So up from 1 billion, 25 million. There's some there's some good ones there. Some close millions. Yeah. Okay, so we all think it's a pretty big number, which makes sense. Okay, so we think it's about 30 million a day. If anything, I suspect that probably underestimates things a little bit, but it gives you a sense of how many presentations are being produced every day. And obviously that makes visual communication much more important than ever. We're all getting kind of bombarded with these presentations. So if we sort of go back in time, the earliest visualization or earliest visual communications probably sort of dates back to around 40,000 years ago, when people were using cave walls as canvases to share kind of stories and knowledge, beliefs, that kind of stuff. So it's no surprise we're very efficient at picking up stories from visuals. And if we throw it forward to today, in the world of social media, there's been quite a few studies that have been done. Stuff like visual content is 40 times more likely to get shared, and articles that feature images receive double the social media shares than just those with text alone. So the kind of research shows it works, and perhaps just to sort of dig into maybe why that is, we've got kind of some of the, I mean, this doesn't cover everything, but just looking at some of the reasons perhaps why visual storytelling is so effective. So first of all, it obviously enhances engagement. So visually appealing content captures the attention and keeps your audience interested. It also improves retention. Visuals help people remember information much better than text alone. There is some research suggesting that's because a picture embeds into the memory twice as kind of verbal code and as an image versus just once for words. It also makes more complex things simple. So this is really helpful, obviously, with data. So we can really turn sort of complex numbers into much more simple visualizations and ideas and get those ideas across. And it also creates emotional connections. So visuals can be much more can evoke emotions and create a much deeper connection with your audience. It also appeals to diverse learning styles. So you're not just putting text on the page. Visual learners get a lot too from putting those visuals on there as well. So you're kind of hitting more learning styles. And then the other one we would probably look at is it encourages interaction. So particularly interactive visualizations can help spark discussions, foster engagement, that kind of stuff. Okay. So if we kind of pull that all together, that's visual storytelling. And then if we perhaps go one step further and talk about data storytelling, what's that? So data storytelling really kind of involves four elements. So we've got data. So obviously that's a foundation of your story. So you've done some research, you've got some numbers, you've got some insights. And I think that's where we kind of look at pulling out the key metric, trying to find obviously your story in data. And then we've got visuals. So then turning that data from raw data into some sort of visual. So that might be a chart, for example. And those two are the ones we're probably most familiar with. So we're all kind of used to getting numbers, putting it into a chart. But the bit that probably we'd often sort of forget or takes a bit of a backseat is these last two here, context and narrative. But they're really important. So context, so this is the setting for your story. So context kind of provides the background information to interpret the data. So when you're thinking about this, it's, who are your audience? How familiar are they with what you're going to be showing them? How are you delivering the presentation? And how much time do you have? So all of those kinds of elements should have a big impact on what you show and how you design any visuals that you use. And then finally, we've got the narrative. So this is the thread that ties everything together. A strong narrative guides your audience through the story and highlights the key takeaways. So here you're really thinking about what the key story points are and having a clear idea of what you want people to come away with from each point you're showing. So particularly, have you got sort of a call to action? Do you want people to do something after reading your presentation or seeing your presentation? Or is it something you want them to remember? So working back from that kind of aim, what you want them to take away, and then coming back from that when you're designing all of your visuals and your presentation is a good way of starting. Our last webinar that we did actually went into a lot more depth on this. And I think Annie will probably put the link into the chat. But if you want to go into a little bit more detail on what data storytelling is, and particularly a framework that we've got around that, you can go to that previous webinar and have a look at the recording of that too. Okay, but in this one, we're really focusing more on presentations. So to do that, what I thought we'd do is go through a bit of a case study. So we'll kind of focus on a sort of pretend example of a presentation that we want to put together, and then we'll go through that. So what I want us to do is kind of imagine that we're working for a company, we called it InfoWorks, and they want to remind their investors that they've got a long track record of being successful. They want to show off their record sales that they had in the last year. And then they want to highlight their plans to continue that sales growth in the coming year. So a kind of classic sort of investor update type presentation. And we've shortened it down. You probably may have a longer presentation than this, but just for this, we've put it into this slightly shorter presentation. So the first thing we'd want to do is to break up our kind of overall story into story points. So that's what we've kind of got on this first slide here, just to help us break it up into what kind of works in three kind of nice key areas. So first of all, we've got the big picture. So looking at that overall sales performance from the last year. Then secondly, what worked, kind of the key factors in what sort of drove that success. And in that section, we need to show off a few key metrics. So we're going to have to put those in. And then finally, where are we going next? So we want to leave people on a positive note, showing that we've got these fantastic projected sales going forward. So what we'll do is we'll walk through kind of visualizing these key points and the sort of data visualization techniques we might use in Flourish and Canva to create a powerful and engaging presentation for this. Okay, so let's have a look at this slide and maybe have a think about what we've got here. So this might be something we're all kind of familiar to being maybe subjected to a slide like this before. So maybe in the chat, can you ever think about some of the things that you think are maybe wrong, or maybe there's some things that are right on the slide. But have a think about some of the things there that you like or don't like, what's working for you on that slide, and then maybe we can go from this and see if we can improve it. Okay, so we've got some questions, some ideas coming through. So too much information. Yeah, that's a good one. The fonts are too small. Yeah, it's very hard to read what's going on, isn't it? A lot of data clutter. Yeah, that's great. Yeah, no consistency. There's not a lot of design kind of in there, lots of colors and things. Yeah, distracting icons. So yeah, we've really gone to town on all the kind of stuff you shouldn't do here. Someone likes the light bulb though. Yeah, there's lots of cool stuff like that in Canva. So okay, and yeah, split the slide into 4 slides. That's maybe a good idea that we'll come to in a minute. And yeah, it's not clear what you want to get out of the slide. It doesn't really. There's just sort of some data and some charts on there, but it's not really telling a story, is it? Or not the story that we want to get across, certainly. Okay. Yeah, the table contains different values. So some really good ideas there. And so, yeah, I think, even though we've gone through how powerful visual communications are, it is easy to get it wrong. And, this is especially true of sort of corporate presentations like this, or academic presentations where we've got complex, high volume, sensitive information that needs to be shared. It's very easy to get it wrong. And kind of poorly conceived visualization can distract your audience from the core message. And at times you can also kind of actually sort of misinform people. So often you kind of find it goes either 2 ways. So either presentations are a bit too stale. So you get these one size fits all templates where people just sort of plug it in and every single slide looks the same, and people are sort of shoehorning the information into the template of the slide. Or it goes perhaps the other way, which is maybe what we've got in this example, where people kind of overload everything and they've got all this information and they just kind of throw it all on the slide. One of the things we see a lot is where people have got maybe a dashboard or something and they want to present the dashboard. So they've done all this work and they want to put it all on the presentation to show how much work they've done. So on this example, yeah, I think you've pulled out most of the things there. There's definitely too many elements. Even on the charts, there's things like thick grid lines, which are a bit overwhelming, too many annotations, decorations around the chart that don't add clarity. So while it's tempting to sort of add all this stuff on, all these elements can be very distracting if they don't serve a clear purpose. So I guess what we're sort of saying here is, every visual element should have a sort of specific function, and you should be asking, does this element help explain that data? Does it reinforce that story I want to tell? And if the answer is no, it's probably best to leave it out. So how can we improve this? So we've just done a very quick 1-slider, just tidying up all the visuals there and making it a little bit clearer. This isn't the final one because I think we do want to probably break it out into individual slides, but you can see immediately just from tidying it up and making things a bit clearer, we get hopefully a better story coming out immediately. So what we'll do is in the next section, we'll walk through some of the changes we've got here and some of the ideas on this slide, and then show you how to use Flourish and Canva to build them out. So now we've got our storyline set up and we've got those 3 main points. What we're going to do is look at choosing the right visual. So there's a few sort of guides here on the next couple of slides of things to try and think about as you choose your visuals. So we've already talked about knowing your audience, so definitely keep that in mind. How much do they know about your data? How much context do you need to give them? That's all good stuff. Also keeping it simple. So we've kind of seen the pitfall there of maybe going a bit too complex and throwing too much on. Choosing the right chart type. We'll come on to this a little bit later as well, but certainly how you choose the right chart again, can come back to the story you want to tell and the sorts of relationships you're showing in your data. And then using color strategically can be really useful as well. We saw on that cluttered slide that the colors were kind of all over the place. Okay, so the first thing, another kind of word of caution is that we've been saying how great data storytelling is, but that doesn't mean that we always have to build a chart. So I think sometimes we always sort of think, right, we've got a number, we need to build a chart. And I think that, that there's that temptation to sort of overcomplicate simple messages. So sometimes a well-placed number can have sort of more impact than a chart. So if we're looking back at our case study, we've got this example of making a chart to show just the 2023 numbers. And we've put it here into a chart, and you can see it doesn't really work. There are no other chart numbers to compare it to. And putting it in a chart just kind of has people looking maybe for a more complicated message than you're actually trying to tell, which is just to give that key number of 953 million. So how could we do that a little bit better? So we can use that key metric and then maybe a simple bold number, maybe with a small arrow or an icon to indicate the direction. And that is going to be kind of, it takes away all the clutter and is going to be much more impactful. And so within Flourish, we can also go a step further, and we can use our number ticker template. And as you saw when the slide loaded, we get this kind of number ticker that builds up, and that way we can sort of build up a little bit of drama as we introduce that sales number as it counts up to the value using that number ticker template. So what we'll do now is we'll go and we'll jump over into Flourish just to show you how to build one of those number tickers now. So if I just jump over. Okay, so now I'm into Flourish. So this is what Flourish looks like if you haven't used it before. This is what it looks like when you load up, and these are all the projects that I've been working on. And then to build a new visualization, we click up the top here, new visualization. And this takes us through to what we call our template chooser. So in here, we've got all the different templates that are available in Flourish, and you can search for them on the left-hand side, either by the name, or you can filter by kind of the purpose or the type of template you want, or you can scroll down and have a look through all of them. But in this one, I know it's called the number ticker, so I'm just going to look it up in here. And as you can see, we've got some starting points here. And for the example I want to do, I just want a very simple number ticker. So if I open it up, we come into here now, the Flourish editor, and this is kind of probably one of the most simple templates we've got in Flourish because we can control all of it from the settings on the right-hand side here. So what I want to do in this example is I've already got, if I go down back into my presentation, I've already got the sales number in there. So what I want to do is actually now put that percentage number. So I think it was 5.2% was the rise over the year. So I'm going to change in here. This is the number that it ticks up to. So we had a default of 1,000. So if I change that to 5.2, it's now going to click up to 5.2. So I obviously need now to put some decimals on this number. So to do that, I go down into the number formatting setting in Flourish. And if I just put maybe one decimal place on, you can now see that looks better already. And I'm also going to put a percentage sign as well as a suffix. Okay, so I've built that now in Flourish. I could make some other changes if I wanted to. So I could change the color, for example. Maybe I'll put it in bold as well. I also might want to do a few things as I bring it into Flourish. Into Canva rather, is to change the layout a little bit. And I'm going to take the background color off so that the background is transparent, so I can bring it into my presentation and it will sit nicely within any other kind of elements that I've got around it. Okay, so the last thing I'm going to do is just save it up the top here. So this can be my sales growth number. And what I'm now going to do is go back into my presentation, open up that presentation and do it live. This is a bit scary, but we'll give it a go. We can go to the slide that we're looking at over here, and we're going to drop it in here. So this is my Canva presentation, and as you can see, we've already got the number ticker for the overall sales. So I'm just going to move that up a little bit, move it over here. I can resize it as well, so I need a little bit of space for my percent sign now. So let's move that down a little bit. And now I can go to my Flourish app within Canva. So that's as simple as going into your apps within Canva, adding the Flourish app, and you'll see that the one I've just built is over here, and it really is then a case of just dragging it over, and I should get my number. So I now got my percentage number, and now I can move that around if I want to resize it. Let's put it somewhere like this. And I can obviously now combine it with any Canva element. So I might want to put a little, let's put a little triangle in here as well to show that it's an increase. Move that around, move it next to my number maybe. And then we'll perhaps put it in the same color. Okay, so now as I click between these two, now we've got both the sales number and the percentage ticking up as well. What I probably wanted to do is make sure that they have the same timing in terms of animation. And so to do that back in Flourish, I can go to the animation section here, and I could just change this duration. That's how long it takes to get to the final number. So I could just set that so it's the same as the sales one, and then they'll just click in together. Okay, so that's how we would build a number ticker in Flourish, and then how you'd bring it over into Canva. So very simple, the two tools work very well together. So we can build that interactive in Flourish and then just bring it back into Canva. Okay. And there we can see it. So it's back in our presentation, and we've built it live into the one we're showing today. Okay, so the next thing we need to do is for our second story point, we had a table in there. So it may not be the best thing to visualize, but we've been told we need to have these key points in here. And one of the things with what we're dealing with here are kind of different key metrics, and they've all got very different scales. So here we've got number of employees, we've got R&D spend, customer ratings. So they're all in different units. Some are in percent, some are in numbers, thousands, millions. So a table can be actually a very good way of presenting those metrics side by side and making them easy to summarize. However, what we can do with Flourish is to really enhance that table and take it a little bit further by adding visual elements like a heat map or mini charts. So for example, with this, we could have perhaps used some color coding to make a little heat map. Or as the example we've got here, where we're actually looking at, we've got little bars that show the values through time, just to give us a sense of which ones are growing and falling, what the pattern is there. Okay, so again, we're going to go over and just have a look at how we would build one of those in Flourish. So if I just go back over into Flourish again. So what I'll do is I'll come back out into the main screen and then create another new visualization. So this time we're going to be using a different template, and we're going to be using the table template in Flourish. And so if I type in table here, you can see we've got a number of different starting points. You can see here we've got one which is a heat map. So that might be one thing you could try for data like this. But in this example, I want to build one a little bit like one of these with some little mini charts on. But I'm going to start from this simple starting point just to make life easier. And so we've got a simple starting point here. And what I need to do in this example is use this data tab within Flourish. So the preview section is where we change all of our settings, and the data is where we put in our numbers. So if I go over into there, we've already got this preset data that came with the example template. So I'm just going to delete that by going up to the data sheet here and going clear sheet. But I could have also just highlighted it and deleted it. And then I'm going to go over into I've got a spreadsheet with the numbers here, and I'm just going to grab that data, copy it, and then just paste it back into Flourish. Okay, so now we've got our table. If I quickly look back into the preview tab, we can see we've got our table all set up here. And now this is where I can start to make a few little design changes and add in things like those mini bars. So the first thing I want to do is go into my table settings here. I'm just going to change the alignment so they all start at the start. I also probably want to get rid of some of these decimal places. That's making it pretty hard to read in this table. So for that, I would go down into the number formatting section, and just like we did a little bit with the number ticker, just take that down to to 0 this time. But in this one, in the table, what I need to do is specify which columns I want to format. So in this one, that's just simply the years. So 2020, 2021, and 2023. And then when I do that, it'll take the decimal places off. So that all is looking good. The thing I might want to do now, obviously, is now add in that little table or the sort of little mini bar chart. So how do I do that? So the way that I do that is there is a section here called mini bar charts. You can see you can also make a mini line chart at the end. And if I click into that, it's saying to me which columns should I, which columns should be part of the bar chart. So I need to tell it what columns. So in this case, I still want to have the data, but I want to have some columns that actually drive the chart. So if I go over into the data here, what I'm just going to do is copy this section here for the numbers and just paste it in again. And I'm just going to give these some different column headers so that I can tell Flourish that I want this section here to be a little bar chart. So I'm just going to change this to Y1, Y2, Y3, and Y4. So now when I go back over into my settings, I can put in this section here, Y1, 2, 3, Y4. And then we get a bar chart up here. Now, I don't really want it to be horizontal bar, so I'm going to change that to vertical. So now we're looking a little bit more like the example we had before. And then the last thing I just want to do is change my colors. So the colors are just a bit further down. I'll go in here, click on Edit Color Palette, and I can choose the color I want because I want them to be all the same color. So if I drag this nice teal up here to the top, and then I'll just delete the other colors because we don't need those. And then we've now got our nice bar charts all in the same color. So now if I wanted to, I can save that table. And again, if I wanted to now, I can then just go back into Canva, go to my Flourish app, and then just drag that across. And then it can be resized and moved around as I need to in Canva in my presentation. Okay, so that's a table, how we'd set up a table. So if we go back now into the presentation, and now we'll finally start to look at kind of world of charts. So one of the common questions we get often is, how do I choose the right chart type? So the key here, I think, is to selecting the right chart type is it kind of lies in your story. So you need to let your story guide those design choices. So particularly considering the relationship you want to highlight between your data points. So if I look on this, we've got a little kind of tool here that we actually built in Flourish using the cards template, which lets us kind of pick different types of data relationships, and then it will give us ideas for the sorts of charts that we could use. So if my story is about kind of ranking, I might want to, if I click on that, I can see it gives me all options like an ordered bar chart, or a column chart, maybe a lollipop chart might work. Or if it's a correlation chart, I might want to do something like a scatter. In my example, I'm probably going to look at change over time because I'm very interested in how those sales have moved. That's going to be my story. So I could use a line chart, or there's some various different options here, area chart or a bar chart. So that's kind of helping me just decide, given the relationship of the data, which type of chart that I could use. But very much kind of experiment and try different things, but this maybe gives you a few things to start from. Okay. So for our example, what we're going to do is we're going to put those sales numbers into a stacked bar chart like this. So what I'll do again is just jump into Flourish just to show you how to build that. Okay, so again, we'll just go back to our project page and then choose new visualization. And this time we want a column chart. So there's one actually just in this line bar and pie template at the top here. So I'm going to click on that. And as I say, as before, it gives us a kind of preview, a starting option just to show you how the data is laid out and so on. But again, I'm going to go into the data tab to change my data. And this time I'm just going to highlight this sort of setup data and just delete it. And I'm going to go into my spreadsheet where I've got my numbers again. And then this time I need my time series data. So I'm going to grab all of that data, go back into Flourish and just paste it in. And then we can see it's created a chart. So this one, I don't need to make too many changes to this one. I might just go in and maybe change some of the colors around. So let's go to the color section, and then we'll maybe just move that color to the top again. That's the one I want, and then move this one. So a couple of small color changes. I might also change the angle of these labels on the x-axis. So if I go to my x-axis settings, and I'll go to the styling section here and then change the angle to 0 degrees. That looks a bit tidier. Okay, so I'm just going to call that my sales chart. And we might come back to this one in a minute because we're going to make a little story animation out of it. So let's just call it my sales chart. But again, I could use that now in Canva, and it would still have all the kind of interactivity and so on. Okay. So let's move on now. And now we've kind of built a couple of kind of key charts. What we'll talk about now is maybe how we can kind of further elevate our presentations by using animation. So animation can kind of breathe life into your visuals. It can make them more engaging, dynamic. And if you kind of use it strategically, you don't want to overdo animation, but you can use it to help guide your audience's attention, sort of highlight key insights. It's very useful for breaking up longer stories into sort of more manageable chunks. And it can overall just create a kind of more memorable presentation. So if we look at some examples, we've got our chart here that we just built, and we can see now we've just got a nice little bit of animation there where it goes from showing all of the data. So we get that long-term context for our investors saying, haven't we done well over a long period? And then we just zoom in to this particular period, and then we pop the numbers onto the chart so that people can see them. What we also do here is to kind of call out the particular parts of the story that we're interested in. And we're using color here kind of strategically to call out North America. That was one of our story points we wanted to get across, that North America had really driven the sales over the last year. Okay, so here it's all about breaking down the story into more digestible pieces. So we've used some annotations, and then we've given people the full context, and then we've let them zoom into the last few years. And you can control like how long that animation lasts and so on. So you might want to talk about it for a certain period and then click through and then zoom it down. Okay. And then we go just one step further now to our final story point, which was looking ahead. And we're looking at the forecast for 2024. And again, what we're doing here is using color to really highlight that last year, and just to show, okay, we're going to continue this growth rate into the next year. Okay. So we've used a kind of fairly simple example for animation there, but Flourish stories can be used with much more complicated data sets. So the example we've got here, this one's actually looking at stock market data. So this is the S&P 500. And in this little example, we've got one dot for each company, and then we kind of resize them by the sizes of the companies. So this is now showing those big tech companies, and then we can break them out into sectors. So as we can see, most of them live over here in the information technology sector. And then this is using our Data Explorer template in Flourish. We can even then break that out onto a chart. So this chart's a little bit out of date, but it's showing price changes, and we can now see how big the growth of NVIDIA has been over this period. So that's a kind of more complicated animation story. But this one is, I think someone was asking, this is the Data Explorer template. So I think that's one of our templates. There's a few different ones like that that we can use to kind of create more sort of in-depth animations. So how do you create those animations? How do we do that? So once again, we'll sort of jump over into Flourish and just show you how that works. We'll do a slightly less complicated example. So what we're going to do is we're going to use this chart that we've already built, and we're going to show you how to make that little animation where we went from showing all of the data to then zooming in just on this little part here. So to do that, what we use are Flourish stories, and there's a create story option up at the top here. So what I need to do with this one though is I need to kind of create two versions of the chart. So I need one with where it's set up as it is, and then I need to create a duplicate of the chart where we just zoom in on that kind of shorter time period. So to make a duplicate, I just go up to the top here and I click on duplicate, and you'll see now that we've got copy of sales chart. And I'll just change that to be, so I know what it's called. So sales chart zoomed in. And all I'm going to do is I'm just going to go and shorten the data period. So I could do this in two ways. I could go back into my data and get rid of some of the rows. But what I'm going to do in this case is go to the x-axis, and I'm just going to change the minimum date here. And I'm going to put that as, let's say, 2019. And I'm going to do a couple of other things. I'm going to hide the axis. Sorry, not that axis. I'm going to hide the y-axis. And the reason I'm going to hide that is because I'm going to go to my labels section, and I'm going to put the labels on the stack of the bar. Okay, so that looks good. And then I'm also going to put the labels on the data points as well. And I'll maybe move those to the middle of the bar. On my data points, I think I also want to make them a little bit bigger, the ones at the top. So I'm going to increase the size down here. It's probably a bit too big. And then the last thing I need to do is I need to tell people that these are in dollars and millions. So for that, I'm going to go to the number formatting section, and I'm going to do a couple of things. I'm going to put the dollar sign in. I'm going to put M for millions, and I'm going to just change this down to no decimal places. Okay, so I'm kind of happy with my chart now. That's going to be my second view, if you like. That's what it's going to zoom into. So now how do I get that to work? All I have to do is go up to the top here and say create a story. So that's going to now create a Flourish story. And so you can see we've gone into a slightly different editor where we have this caption at the top here. And we've got different slides down the bottom, down here. So these are just like a slideshow. So if I click on here and I want to add that other slide in that's got all of the data. So if I go in here, click new slide, choose a visualization, and the one I want is this original one here. And I just now need to drag that and move it to start. So now we've got this nice, if I click on the arrows here, we now go between the two and we get that animation between the two. Okay, so it's very easy to build something like this. This is a very simple example, but you can imagine with that Data Explorer one that we were just doing different views of the data, and then it will animate between it. And that's something that Flourish is really good at. You can put lots of different versions of your same chart in, and it will animate between them really nicely. So then if I wanted to then use that, I could just save that as my sales story. And once again, I can just set that up and drag it over into Canva and put it straight into my presentation. Okay. So let's just carry on with where we were. So the last kind of things we want to go through is kind of now say, we've done all of that. How can we then sort of apply that to our case study? So let's go through it. So kind of let's recap a little bit. So we've explored the kind of fundamentals of data visualization, how to use it to tell stories. We've discussed the kind of importance of knowing your audience, choosing the right chart type. And so now let's go back to that original sales case study and see how we can transform that original cluttered presentation into something a bit clearer. So to remind people, we started with this. Yeah, that doesn't look so good. So how have we improved it? So to remind everyone, we had these 3 story points. So these were the key things we needed to get across: the sales review, what worked with our key metrics, and then where we're going next. So this time, rather than putting it on one slide, I think someone in the chat brought this up right at the start. A great idea would be to break it out into those 3 story points. So one slide for each. So now we've got one slide here, which looks at North America. It uses that animation that we just did very quickly in Flourish. And we've also added in a couple of annotations to really point out those key story points. So the 5.2% growth and the sales driven by North America, we're using those, a combination of a chart and those big bold numbers. Next slide we've got, these are our key metrics. So again, at the top here, we haven't really talked about this too much, but using the title is really good to use that text as a way to really drive home your story. What we found with that original cluttered chart is all the titles were just kind of very descriptive. Really just use that real estate to explain what you're getting, what you want people to come away with. And so in this example, what we've done is we've used that table. We've made it a bit more appealing with the mini bar charts. And then again, we're using some annotations to pull out what we think are the key stories from this table. So they are perhaps that we've got now a new record employee count, over 4,000 for the first time. And we've also seen our customer ratings recover. So we went down to 78% in 2021, and we're now back up to 87. So we're starting to call out some key stories and let people grab some insights from this rather than just putting it straight on the page. And then we've got our final slide here, which is where we throw it forward to the next year. So again, using a bit of color to highlight that last year, and again, a nice annotation in the same format, just to point out where we think sales are going, and perhaps some of the reasons behind that we can talk to. Okay, so let's recap. We've been through quite a lot very quickly. So just to recap some of that. So firstly, it's the importance of data storytelling. So thinking about the context and the narrative to drive all of those design decisions. And once again, it's worth maybe having a look at the previous webinar to give you a bit more depth on that. We also talked about the benefits of visual storytelling. So they were things like enhanced engagement, improved retention, simplifying complexity, that emotional connection, appealing to different learning styles, and getting more interaction with your audience. We also talked about avoiding clutter, so really good one there. Removing kind of elements that aren't useful for our main story. And then we talked about choosing the right visual. We kind of talked about avoiding maybe jumping straight in and trying to build a complex chart for everything. Sometimes that's not necessary, but if we are using a chart, we talked about using the story point and the relationship to be the guide for what kind of chart we choose. And then we went through animation, both as a way to kind of build up suspense, break up stories, and then guide the audience's attention, particularly maybe on that sales example, and then making the narrative just overall kind of more memorable and engaging. And then finally, we were using Flourish to build these. So we looked at 3 different templates. We looked at the number ticker to bring to life those key data points. We used the table template to kind of take tables, I guess, a step further using those mini charts or a heat map or a mini line chart. And then we used a Flourish bar chart and then combined that by using a story to animate between 2 views. So obviously we kind of only really scratch the surface of some of the stuff that Flourish can do there. There's lots of different other templates which you can try and other chart types you can use in your presentations. There are lots of kind of different resources you can use to help find those. So we'll pop a few of those in the chat. So our blog page is a really good place to start, and that has lots of good ideas about things you could use Flourish for. And we've also got our help docs, which are a great kind of use, great starting point. Okay, so thanks very much for sticking with us through that. And feel free to pop any questions into the chat, and perhaps we'll take a look at them for a little while. And I think Annie's now going to take you through what's new in Flourish. So we'll have a look through if there's any questions, we can answer those after that.
Hi guys. Thank you so much, Scott. That was absolutely amazing. So yeah, I'm just looking at all the thank yous in the chat. Yeah, Scott, that was amazing and thank you so much. I am just going to quickly run you guys through something super exciting and new. So if you are a Flourish user, you might have noticed this already, but we've actually just released two free themes for all of our users. So now you can really, really easily apply some new styling choices to your charts. So yeah, make sure you check that out. I hope to see some charts from you guys using those new themes. And also, if you want to check out anything else that's new, you can click the link that I'll send out in the slide, and that will link to our changelog, so you can see all of what we are updating in Flourish. Um, but yeah, if you have any questions, we've got a little bit of time now, so I don't know if Scott, if there's any questions in the chat that you do want to answer. Um, but if we don't have a chance to get to your questions today, you can always reach out to us. So for anything webinar specific, just reach out to flourish-webinar@canva.com. As I said, that's for webinar specific questions. But for anything else, please reach out to hello@flourish.studio with any other questions. And also make sure you follow us on social media. You can follow us on Twitter or X. I'm not going to read that one out loud. Or you can follow us on Instagram. That is Made with Flourish. Or finally, you can follow us on LinkedIn. And we do post some really, really cool stuff on there. Lots of ideas for how to create engaging visualizations and all of that fun stuff. So yeah, thank you so much for joining. Please let us know if you have any questions, and we hope to see you guys again soon.